I'm Mike Costello, and I'm here with Dr. Iris Freelander, and today we'd like to talk to you about giving up control. Now, in today's environment, that might seem very strange because it's seemingly a thing that we want to have is control. And in fact, as we learn to give up control over circumstances and situations, we become so free and empowered that good and wonderful things begin to happen. Isn't that true, Iris?
Yes, it is. And we can look at our own lives and see when we've tried to stay in charge of things and stay in control of how miserable we are and how tired we get and how we don't quite live up to what we would like to. But when we just relax and let life take its course in the people around us, and of course, if we have work that we need to do, whether it's family obligations or work in the business world, then we have to do certain things. But we don't have to control everything. All we have to control is our own small, minute part. And we don't even have to control that all that much, do we?
No, we really don't. You know, what we have to do is control. If there's an issue of control, it's controlling the dynamic of our mind to allow our minds to be open to the expectation of good and only good. And I think if we can give up control of our lives and control of all of the circumstances in the simple expectation of good coming from every circumstance and situation, then we begin to move through the process of life and we begin to empower ourselves with the knowledge and the awareness that when circumstances and situations present themselves, that we will indeed be guided and directed. And now a lot of people use spiritual principles, and of course we teach a lot of those. And one of the things we spend a lot of time on this program talking about is we're never talking about proselytizing or trying to get anyone to believe what we believe from a spiritual standpoint. What we do talk about are universal principles and metaphysical truths that can be applied to everyone's life and to create a dynamic and confident way of living. And that confident way of living comes from our giving up the need to control circumstances and situations and expecting good in everything that happens and then allowing life to take the course that it's going to take. And I think for many of us that's a hard thing to do because we want to understand, we want to know why things happen. And I think a lot of metaphysical people get into that trap, and psychological folks and sociologists and all the rest get into trying to understand why it is circumstances have brought us to where we are. And there's some value to that. But I think we spend a lot of time, too much time, in trying to analyze why we're here, why we're at a point in life. Instead, we need to say, this is where we are. And as we've heard me say so many times, if you're depressed, you're depressed. If you're sick, you're sick. If you're sad, you're sad. If you're happy, you're happy. Wherever we are, whatever has come into life, that's where we are, and that's all right. And then give up the need to control that circumstance, give up the need to understand why it happened. And of course, one of the things that we say so often is when we ask why something has happened, we really don't want an answer at all. We want an argument. And so what we really need to do is ask the question, what? What do I do with this circumstance or situation? What do I do now? How am I to react and respond? And we will all be guided and directed in the things that we need to say, the behavior that needs to come forth, the words that need to come forth, and our actions will flow out of this abundance of infinite intelligence. And it's not because of us, excuse me, or because of something that we have to control. It's because of who we are. And we are these empowered individuals with limitless intelligence and motivation, and we are divinely inspired, so we can be guided and directed if we just get out of the way. But instead, we so often want to be in control.
Yes, and when we let other people control their own part of whatever it is they're doing, then, you know, from your viewpoint as a businessman, I know you give everyone leeway to do whatever, but if they go too far afield, then you have to pull them back. And that's being a good manager, but also being a good manager is letting people use their own intuition, their own intuitiveness, their own creativity, because then we get so much more than we know that we even know to want. Because then we're getting, it's just like at the church, when everyone remarks about how you just let everyone do whatever they want to do. If they want to do something, then do it. Well, I haven't seen anyone want to do anything there that's not wonderful. And they bring the food, they do the things they want to do, they take part the way they want to. And the man who bought a car so he could bring his drums to play his drums is a prime example. And so it's a wonderful thing to see people be able to use their own ingenuity to do whatever they want to do to supply the needs of each other. And it's just like they bring the special fruits and vegetables and things for the potlucks. Well, that's a very lovely thing, but they wouldn't do it if everything was just cut and dried. And if you would say, well, you do this and you do this and you do this, well, then they would just do that and they wouldn't be creative. So, and I'm sure that's how you run your businesses too. And because the people who do that get so much more value from the people under them, don't they?
Absolutely. And it's amazing how people at all levels of an organization, whether it's in the corporate structure or whether it's in an institutional or institutional structure, if we allow people to deal with life the way that they choose to, and if we give up the need to control, and I think as the more we become dynamic leaders of organizations, either on the corporate side or the institutional side, or in our families and in our personal lives, as we begin to give up this issue of control, and if we give up telling people and shepherding things along, we begin to see a different kind of life coming forth, and we begin to see people demonstrating life in a different way. And it is an absolute and wonderful way to operate. And of course, logic would tell us, well, you ought not to do that. And of course, many of us have been taught that we need to control everyone. We need to control everyone, and especially our subordinates. But in fact, as we give up control, then we empower people, and people begin to mimic or begin to behave according to the value system that they see and the behavioral system that they see, that bring about the results that bring the good that everyone seeks.
Yes.
And when we see good, and when we see prosperity, and when we see success, when we see this happening, again, on the corporate side or the institutional side, then people begin to say, well, this whole issue of control isn't so important. And as we give that up, good things begin to happen, and people rise to their greatest good. And their greatest good is that level of creativity that is so often suppressed by this absolute control. And we've talked before about children, and we spend a lot of time telling children, what do we tell them most of all? No. We tell children what they can't do. And that's exactly what we ought not to be doing. And it's wonderful that children have the resilience that they have. And of course, there are some common and reasonable things to tell them not to do. But the fact is that for the most part, we control our children far more than we need to. And as we allow our children to be creative and expressive, and as we allow ourselves to watch them in that process, and then we translate that behavior into adult behavior when we're dealing with our peers and our subordinates and our contemporaries, then we begin to see that dynamic unleashing magnificent power because of this lack of control, because there is this, as we say, divine order that's in the midst of every circumstance and situation. And in fact, everything is moving and working toward and for a good cause. And I know a lot of people argue with me about that, but I've really never found it to fail yet. And it is just amazing, as we give up the need to control those around us in circumstances and situations, how many wonderful and good things begin to happen.
Yes, and I think in every business or organization, there has to be ground rules, there has to be policy set. But when people know policy, then they respect it. And if they don't know it and it's brought to their attention, then they're eager to accept it. So most people just really want to do what's best. But I think it's just so wonderful seeing people be creative. And you were talking about the children doing that. Yesterday, my little grandson had a little balloon he was playing with. It was a small heart-shaped balloon that came with a Mother's Day arrangement, and he wanted to play with that, and I said, fine. And so he played with it, and then he hit me with it, and I told him, don't do that. And I told him 3 times, don't do that, and he kept hitting me with it. And he wasn't hurting me, but he shouldn't hit me with anything. So I took it and put it up on a picture frame where he couldn't reach it. And he started crying and jumping up and down. And I just picked up a book and started reading it. And he said, so then he very soon stopped jumping up and down and played with something else. But he learned that he isn't going to hit people. So then very soon after that, a guest stopped in. A young man was there, and came in the house and was visiting with Colton and me. And so Colton was a perfect host. And I was wondering how he's going to react because he was so upset because he couldn't have the balloon. So he was entertaining our guest by bringing toys over and showing them to him. And he was a perfect little host. And it just, and I thought, you know, if I had allowed him to hit me with that, it wouldn't have had the same, he wouldn't have learned. And it would have a bad result, because then he would do it again. And now I think he won't do it again. And that's true as we work with anyone, anytime, anywhere. We just have to be strong in our own convictions, but not try to curtail creativity. That's the secret, isn't it?
Absolutely. Not to control the circumstance and situation. And just a few moments ago, you spoke about business in the business environment. And one of the things that we do, and we do a fair amount of business consulting, and I'm involved as much in business as I am in other involvements. And one of the things that we do over and over with boards, and with both institutional boards and with corporate boards, for-profit corporations, is we remind the boards of the issue of setting policy, broad policy, and then give up control.
Exactly.
And that's the hardest thing for boards to do. It's the hardest thing for people in leadership to do. It's the hardest thing for us to do in our personal lives. It's hard for us to do in our daily lives. And it's true whether you're the president of a corporation or whether you're the mother and the father in a household. That issue of setting the broad parameters, set the policy in a broad way, and then give up control, and give control to everyone within the organization, everyone within the family, and give that respect.
Yes, and let them use their own mind, let them use their own, do what they need to do, because each person has a certain creativity they need to express, and it could be in any number of ways, whether you're an employee or part of a family or part of a couple. But whatever it is, we have to remember to do that, and then we are happier, and then they are happier, and the world is happier, and it affects all of humanity.
And it begins to dissipate the issue of control and to let people express their own destiny and their own life. We'd like to pause at this point in the program and offer you the opportunity to receive some literature so that you can continue to study the ideas and concepts that we're sharing with you today.
Would like to offer you the opportunity to receive one of these free booklets to further your understanding of the new thought message of confident living. Each month we will feature a different booklet, which will be mailed to you free and postage paid. Simply address your request to Confident Living at P.O. Box 7726, Long Beach, California, 90807.
Giving over control is just such a hard thing for so many people. Why do you think that is, Iris?
Well, I think it's hard for some people because they have a lot of energy and they just want to make sure things go the way they think they should. And some of us are lazy, and we learn with life that if we give up control, then everything goes much better, because people, family members or employees, will then do their very best and use their own creativity to bring up new ideas and to use new ideas, and they will branch out in various ways, where if someone is putting pressure and just saying do this and this and this and this, then they do that, but that's all. And so it's hard because it's I just think it's human nature, but we learn, don't we?
We do learn. And, and of course, most of us think that our ideas are the best ideas, right? And so it's hard for us to give up control, even when we have that control, and not influence other people and influence circumstance and situation. And yet when we learn to give up that control and to let go, then we begin to see so many things moving in a much more positive way. The other thing that happens is life becomes less burdensome for us. You know, it's very hard for us to control our emotions and our circle of friends and our family and our work environment, and to work so hard at control. And we go back to this issue of stress in today's environment, and how many people are stressed, and how many people are depressed, and how many people are isolated, and how many people have these feelings of inadequacy. And they come back to this issue of needing to control, and this issue of control feeds these negative aspects of life that we just mentioned. And as we begin to give up control, then we begin to open ourselves and to let go of these things that are dissipating our own energy, and we begin to enjoy life in a much more full and fantastic way. And it sounds impossible, you know, to a lot of people, but it works. It works. I mean, these principles work, and we've seen them work over and over again. It's a little bit like the principles of abundance and prosperity, and of course that's a separate topic, but we say to people, you know, the more you spend, the more you get. And so, you know, people don't understand that concept often, but the fact is that the more control that we give up and the more control that we give over to other people, the more that we get from the magnificent outpouring of the experiences of life, and the more empowered we become in the lack of control. And by that very virtue, the controlling nature is released into a collective nature that is supportive and is nurturing of other people and those around us. And people respond to it. And we go back to children. Children respond to it. Adults respond to it. And it can change and transform people's lives. And these controlling natures and these controlling abilities that we have and compulsions in life, we need to let go of and release.
Yes, and furthermore, I think the reason people don't want to give up control is the people who least want to give up control are the people who least welcome change. And some people like change. They really like a new approach. They like something new and different. They like change in their lives. But some people don't. And those who don't it's harder for them to give up control. Don't you think that's it?
That's absolutely true. And the other issue is trust.
Yeah.
And of course, trust is also another issue. And if we don't trust each other, and if we don't trust those in our families and those around us, then life becomes such a defeated and painful experience. And yet this need to control is at the core of that, and it destroys so many people's lives. And it is something that we really need to work at letting go of. But for many people, it's a process that begins with small steps of letting go of control and giving up control. And as people begin to do that, and I would encourage people, begin to give up control of your household, begin to give up control of your children, begin to give up control of your own destiny, begin to give up control of your own emotions and your own feelings, and allow those to come forth, and then begin to deal with them in a positive and affirmative way. And life becomes so magnificent then.
Yes, and we can see it from just moment to moment and day to day when we do live like that. And I think you can see that in families where there's happiness within a family, then no one's trying to control. And when the family is really unhappy, then someone or more are trying to control, or perhaps they're all trying to, too hard. But we can just look around us and see how that happens. We can also assess our own lives and see, where am I not giving up control? And then try and do something about it, because we can do anything consciously. We can make any changes in our lives that we want to make. So as we consciously give up control in other people's lives, then we'll see how everyone blossoms and responds far more fully. And it's just a lovely thing to see. And you can see that in your business, in the place where your subordinates who still have a managerial position, when they won't give up control, then where you have subordinates who do have a managerial position, but they will give up control, then you can see the difference. And I'm sure that that's true in your life, because you have various facets to your business, and that would be true in any business. But there still has to be guidelines to be followed. And everyone has to follow policy and guidelines, but that's a different thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. And those are broad, those are much broader aspects of life. But what we're talking about is the issue of needing to control people's behavior. And that going, as before time gets away from us, we need to talk about the fact that we really can't control other people's behavior. And we'd like to very often, so many of us, but the fact is that I can't control what Iris thinks or what she does. And you and I have been friends for many, many years, and we respect and trust each other. And a number of years ago, there was a book what was Terry Cole Whitaker's well-known book?
What you think about me is none of my
business. Exactly. Marvelous book. Because we so often think that we can control how people perceive us, what they think about us, how they're going to behave, and in fact, that's none of our business. And how people behave. Now, of course, when we're talking about children, it's a little different situation because we are setting values and we're doing certain things that are molding behavior. But in life in general, we need to give up this need to control how others are feeling about us. And of course, we know in personal relationships and in intimate relationships, we get into all kinds of problems by trying to control the affections of someone else, for heaven's sakes. And how many you and I have spent hours and hours in counseling people who have gotten into relationships and marriages that should never have happened because someone wanted the other person to have the feelings for them that never existed. And this need to control another's feelings or another's thoughts. And we need to just give that up. And as we mature as persons and as adults, we absolutely need to give up the issue of trying to control other people's behavior as it relates to what they're thinking about us and how it is they're feeling about us. They're entitled to feel the way they want to feel about us. And, amazingly, a lot of people don't like Mike Costello, and that's perfectly all right with me. But I'm not bothered by it, and I don't spend any time trying to control those people, nor do I try to control the people who happen to like me. That happens because of the dynamic that occurs between us as persons and with the issues of respect and trust in life. And so this issue of controlling what others do and how they behave and how they think, it's a very dangerous thing.
It is, and also it's false and fickle, because if we force people to act a certain way against their nature, then where have we gone? We've just gone into trouble. And so it's better just to let everyone be and be themselves. And when we do, life is far more beautiful, relaxing, comfortable, and enjoyable, and is an adventure. And I think we can all take the adage, make it an adventure. And if we do, then we don't try to control, because you don't control adventure.
Absolutely. Life's an adventure and it's a mystery.
Yeah.
And between those two things, it's an exciting experience.
Yes.
And every day becomes more and more magnificent because of those aspects of life. But the more we control, the more we rob ourselves, the more negative we become, and the more hurtful our potential is.
Yes, that's something we all need to remember, that we're robbing ourselves of great value in life when we try to control others, because then we're using our energy in a fruitless way. So if we don't try to control, and if we find that we are of that nature, then we can look at our lives objectively and see how. And we should each do that from time to time. Just see, am I trying to control this situation or this person or this whatever it might be? Because if we are, then we can change very rapidly.
And if we can trust before time gets away from us, the last couple of minutes, if we can trust the world and trust the environment in which we find ourselves and trust that we're in a good place, then life becomes much more meaningful and much more affirming for us. And I think that we need to come to that point where we can indeed trust life and not need to control the circumstances and situations and not be so fearful and not be afraid.
And then the adventure will be very wonderful and joyous and uplifting, and we won't have nightmares at night. We'll have pleasant dreams.
Control is a behavior that is learned, like any of the other aspects of behavior that we talk about in this program, and we can decide to change. And when we decide to change, we make a positive choice, and we change our behavior, and we change the way that we think. And in metaphysics and New Thought, we talk so often about the fact that we live in our minds and not in the world. And that simply means that we live in our thoughts, and that the circumstances and situations around us, the experiences around us take place, but the dynamic of how those experiences relate to us all takes place in our minds. And so we do indeed live in our minds, and if we change our minds, we can change our lives.
Totally, 100%. And we're each born on one sign of the zodiac, one of the 12 signs of the zodiac. And so some people have more propensity for wanting to control than others. So we have to know ourselves. We have to study ourselves and then decide what it is we want and then work toward that goal. And as we do, then we see ourselves more clearly, and we're more happy with with the results of our life.
Absolutely. A wonderful point is that this issue of introspection and self-examination, if we look at our lives, and we need to do that often.
Yes.
We need to do it often. You and I talk to people about doing it every day.
Yes.
Spend a few moments of self-examination every day. But if we look at our lives, and if we have a controlling nature, if we have a negative nature, if we have a negative thought pattern, if our minds are operating to control our environment and those around us, we can change that. And we can work to begin to change that by changing the way that we think about ourselves first and about other people. And it is always up to us. And we have that ability to change and to make choices in life. And we spend a lot of time talking about that.
Yes, as we make our choices and then live with those choices, if we observe, we'll see that if we're not trying to control any circumstance, we're far happier in the long run, regardless of how circumstances go. And so when we try to control other people, we can look at them and see how they're, or we can, not when we try to control them, but when we look at life generally, the people who are totally controlled have less life in their lives, less joyousness, less spontaneity. And so it's something that we can look at others and take our lesson from that. But again, we need to always remember that life is a series of choices. We have charge of our own lives. And we don't have charge of other people's lives, not even small children, because they each have their own personality, their own way of being. But it's how we react to them that makes the difference. It's how we react to our fellow workers that makes the difference. And so we can, as we each try diligently to do better in that way, to control less, to control our lives less. And taking back your power is not controlling others.
Exactly.
So we need to know the difference in those two, don't we?
Absolutely. And we need to do that. We need to bless and release other people, let them receive all of that life has for them, and we need to be joyous receivers of life ourselves. And we hope that the information that we've shared with you has been useful, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
And Iris would like to extend a cordial invitation for you to join them this Sunday morning at 11 a.m. for our weekly celebration service at the beautiful Seaport Marina Hotel at the corner of Pacific Coast Highway and 2nd Street, adjacent to the Marina Pacifica and Marketplace shopping centers. There will be a guided meditation, prayers, spirited music, and a dynamic, life-changing New Thought message. Please join us this Sunday. You will be warmly welcomed into the company of like-minded, positive, and uplifting people. And remember, whatever your dream, whatever your vision, you can attain it through confident living.